Welcome to the deep dive. There's certainly been a lot of talk about gold and silver lately,
It really has.
and you can see why. As of today, that's April 14th, 2025, gold spot price is sit around $205.24 an ounce,
hmm
and silver about $32.29 an ounce. Those aren't small numbers.
No, definitely not. And you've pulled together some really relevant material for us to look at today. There's that video from January this year looking at what affects gold prices,
Right.
and then another one, a bit older, from January 2023 that gets into like how much physical metal someone might actually need.
Exactly. So the big question, the one we really want to unpack for you today, is pretty straightforward. With the market where it is and based on what these sources are telling us, why might holding gold and silver, the physical stuff, be a really prudent choice for you?
Okay, a great starting point.
Yeah, let's dive in. Maybe starting with something really fundamental, the difference between, well, physical metal supply and our regular fiat currencies.
That's absolutely the foundation here. That
Let's
older video really hammers this point home. I mean, think about it.
Hmm.
The money we use every day, fiat currency, it can essentially be created, well, almost without limit.
Right.
Like that video explains, our financial system is largely based on debt.
Hmm.
And when things get shaky economically, what do central banks often do? They increase the money supply, print more, basically.
Yeah, they hit the go button on the digital press, so to speak, and there's no real cap on that.
Exactly. No inherent limit.
And the video makes it clear, doesn't it? Every time that happens, the value of the money already out there, the stuff in your pocket or your bank account, it can get diluted.
Precisely. Like adding more water to juice, weakening the flavor.
Good analogy. Now, contrast that with physical gold. That 2023 video mentioned a global supply of something like, what was it, 7.498 billion ounces.
That's the figure they used, yeah. Around 7.5 billion ounces.
And that's pretty much it, right? It's finite. You can't just whip up more gold.
Nope. Can't just conjure it out of thin air. And that scarcity, that inherent limitation, that's a huge part of why gold and silver have held appeal as stores of value for so long.
So as global debt keeps climbing, and that older video pegged it around $313 trillion back then.
Which is likely higher now.
Right, almost certainly. As that number goes up, the risk that fiat currency loses its buying power over time also increases.
Exactly. Whereas physical gold and silver, just because there's only so much of them, they tend to hold their ground better against this expanding sea of fiat money.
Okay, so this is where, for me at least, it got really interesting. That how much gold and silver do you need? Video brought up this idea of a true fundamental value based on covering global debt with physical gold. Now, I know it's theoretical, but
Wow. It is theoretical, but it's a fascinating thought experiment, isn't it? They walk through the math,
hmm
take that huge debt number, the $313 trillion from early 23,
uh-huh.
divided by the estimated gold supply, that roughly 7.5 billion ounces.
Big get
You get a number somewhere in the ballpark of $41,744 per ounce, theoretically.
$41,000 an ounce compared to what, just over 3,000 today? That's a massive gap.
It's a staggering difference. And then they take it a step further, applying a historical gold to silver ratio around 20 to 1
Right.
to suggest silver's fundamental value is also way, way higher than its current spot price of around $32.
So, okay, if this potential underlying value is theoretically so much higher, why aren't we seeing that reflected in the day-to-day spot prices? What gives?
That's the million-dollar question, or maybe the $41,000 question. And the video suggests the answer lies in how gold and silver are actually traded.
Okay.
See, a huge amount of the trading volume isn't physical metal changing hands. It's happening through paper contracts, things like futures, options, and especially those exchange-traded funds, the ETFs.
Ah, the paper markets.
Exactly. Essentially, they're bets or claims on the price of gold and silver rather than the metal itself. And because so much activity is in these paper instruments,
It can push the price around based on sentiment or algorithms, not just physical supply and demand.
that's the idea. These markets can be swayed by speculation, by big money flows in and out of funds, all sorts of things that aren't directly tied to someone actually wanting to buy or sell a physical bar or coin right now.
So the argument then becomes, if you hold the actual physical metal, you're holding something closer to that fundamental scarcity value, and you're sort of insulated from the volatility of those paper markets.
That's the core argument, yes.
Right.
You're holding the real thing, not just a claim on it. And this leads right into another really practical point from that older video.
Which is,
Barterability. The idea of using physical gold and silver to maintain your standard of living if things get really uncertain.
Right. This is the real world what if scenario planning. The video talked about needing to figure out your actual living costs, right? Your debts, what you might need down the road.
Exactly. Doing a personal assessment.
Hmm.
How much would you need to cover essentials if maybe the normal financial system wasn't working smoothly for a while?
And trying to figure out how much physical gold or silver you'd need for that.
And crucially, as the video points out, having the right kinds of physical metal, the right denominations.
Yeah, that makes sense. A giant gold bar isn't much use if you just need to buy some bread or gas, right?
Precisely. You'd need smaller denominations, maybe fractional gold coins or more likely silver coins or rounds for everyday type transactions. That practicality, that usability in a pinch is a big advantage of physical possession.
Okay, practicality is covered. Let's shift a bit. What about the history? Gold as an inflation hedge. The newer video from this year touched on that long-term view.
It did. It mentioned that incredible climb since what, 1833? From around $20 an ounce way back then
Yeah.
to nearly $1,800 by early 2023 when that video was made. That's a huge long-term appreciation.
But the video also added some nuance, didn't it? It's not always a perfect hedge against all inflation.
Right, that's important context. It's not like it perfectly tracks mild everyday inflation month by month. But where it seems to really come into its own is as a safe haven, particularly during periods of high inflation.
Like the 1970s.
Exactly, like the 70s. And maybe even more importantly, during times of real economic fear and uncertainty when people lose confidence in central banks or the stability of currencies.
But it's not guaranteed. The video mentioned the 1980s, right? When rising interest rates actually hurt gold prices.
Precisely. So it's not a simple one-to-one relationship.
Uh.
Other factors matter. However, the video did highlight an interesting pattern.
Okay.
In most bear markets since the 1970s, gold actually performed positively. The thinking is that governments often respond to downturns with stimulus and low rates,
Which can devalue currency.
making gold look more attractive as an alternative.
Yeah.
But yeah, as the 80s showed, it's not an automatic win. It's complex.
And part of that complexity comes from investment demand itself, doesn't it?
Mhm.
The newer video talked about bars, coins, and especially those ETFs.
Yeah, that segment of demand, investment demand, makes up about 25% of global gold demand, according to that source. It's significant. And the flows into and out of things like gold ETFs can definitely move the needle on price.
How much? Did it say?
It gave a specific correlation, suggesting that for every 100 tons of gold flowing into or out of major ETFs in a month, the price could move by around 3%.
Wow, okay. So big ETF movements can really impact the spot price we all see.
They can, which, again, highlights the potential difference if you're holding the physical metal yourself.
You're outside that particular game, in a sense. Your wealth isn't directly tied to those fund flows.
Exactly. Now, the older video brought up another angle, too, which I found interesting. Collectible gold and silver coins.
Ah, right, numismatics.
Yeah. It suggested these can be a key part of someone's holdings, and crucially, they're usually held privately. You can't typically put them in a standard gold IRA, for instance.
So it's another layer, a different kind of holding outside the main financial system tracks.
Sort of, yeah. A more private store of wealth. The video mentioned historical price indices for these coins showing big gains since the 70s, though obviously with ups and downs.
And what was the potential upside argument there?
The idea floated was that these collectibles might still be undervalued compared to past peaks. And in like a major economic reset scenario or even something more extreme like asset confiscation talk, these privately held, scarce, tangible items could see their value jump significantly just because they are physical, rare, and outside the system.
Makes sense. And thinking about institutions, we can't ignore the central banks, can we? The newer video mentioned their holdings.
A really key point. Central banks globally hold massive amounts of gold in reserve.
But not crypto.
But generally not crypto, no.
Hmm.
That difference alone tells you a lot about the perceived long-term stability and role of gold in the eyes of major financial institutions. It suggests a continued belief in gold as a fundamental store of value, a hedge against global uncertainty.
It really anchors its importance in the system, doesn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely does. It's foundational.
Okay, so let's bring it all back. We keep circling back to that main message from the "How much gold and silver do you need?" video. The sheer importance of physical possession.
That really is the crux of it, isn't it? It's not just about having exposure to the price of gold or silver on paper.
Right.
Having the actual metal in your control, that offers a kind of security and diversification that, well, paper assets just can't match.
Even things like gold or silver IRAs, while they hold metal, they're still kind of tied into the financial system, the paper markets.
They are, ultimately. They have their place, but they don't offer that same level of separation, that true hedge against systemic risks that physical possession provides.
So, wrapping this up, when you really look at it, the fact that physical gold and silver are finite, the idea that their fundamental value might be much higher given global debt,
Yeah, that theoretical value.
their historical track record in preserving wealth during really tough economic times,
Especially times of fear.
and just the basic security of holding something real, something tangible. It really seems like owning physical precious metals offers a unique kind of financial resilience, something definitely worth thinking about for yourself.
Absolutely. It's about understanding those fundamentals.
We hope this deep dive has given you a good framework, some solid reasons to consider why physical metals might fit into your own strategy. Of course, you need to look at your own situation, your risk tolerance, and keep doing your homework.
Definitely. Personal circumstances are key.
And before we go, a big thank you to our sponsor, At Cost Metals. They're your one-stop shop for all your precious metals needs.